Everybody to the I2 session. I'd just like to introduce Lee to you. Lee is an award-winning businesswoman, a sought-after public speaker, and an extreme athlete. I think there's quite a lot more that you could add to it. Lee is the CEO of Blue Platinum Events. She won in 2013. She became the third woman to summit Mount Everest. In 2015, was South Africa's Businesswoman of the Year in the entrepreneurial category. And she's the founder of Field of Dreams Children's Center. Welcome, Lee. We really look forward to having a lovely session with you.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you very much for the introduction. And I'm going to step straight into sharing my screen. Right. I don't know why it's not going on to the slide presentation. It's never happened. I don't believe this. I can't get it to full screen.
Someone's saying they can't hear anything. George, can you just check on your side whether there's been the sharing?
Yes, the presentation is showing. It's just currently not on full screen.
Yeah, and I don't know why it's not going on to full screen. Apologies.
Lee, what you could do at the bottom right corner.
Yes.
Go to your left, the first icon there. If you click that, it should. So no, on the left hand side, move left.
Okay. Sorry, guys, I don't know why it's never happened.
But on the bottom left corner, next to the minus sign, if you click that little icon, it should take it on full screen on the right hand side.
On the right hand side.
Yes, so you see there's the plus, and then the minus on the, yes, that icon there, the icon next to the minus. On the move to your left, your cursor to your left, that one.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you very, very much. I do appreciate that. So can everybody see it?
Yes, we can.
Full screen. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Please accept my apologies. I've been doing this talk for since March last year virtually, and that's never happened. So I do apologize. Right. Thank you very, very much for having me this morning. I've been so excited about it since getting the booking. Before I take you onto Mount Everest, one of the titles that I saw, how you positioned today's talk, was calling it What Happens When You Say Yes. And I'd like to share with you, in 2019, I brought out my book, which is an exclusive book, and I'm really excited about it. It's titled What Happens When You Say Yes. And essentially what that is all about is making decisions. It's committing to things. Because I really believe when you commit to the challenges and the toughest things, therein lie the greatest gifts. Mount Everest was the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life, and it has ended up being my greatest gift. There are many lessons on this mountain, many tools that I've applied to my life after doing the mountain, and I'm still applying them today, and I really hope today's talk brings value to your individual lives. So Mount Everest, we all know it's the highest mountain in the world. It's just under 9 kilometers in height, and the first 2 men to summit, I'm sure you know, was in 1953. It was Sir Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. And in the last 68 years, there are only 5,523 people that have stood on top of the world. Out of that number of people, there are only 459 women. But why Mount Everest? I love to challenge myself, and as Shelley said in my introduction, I've been running an event company, Blue Platinum Events. I've been running it for 21 years, and it was in the year 2012, we were doing a roadshow for a medical aid company, and we utilized Lewis Pugh. He was the inspirational speaker for our event, and I was so motivated by this guy. It was in June 2012, and his whole talk was essentially about nothing in this life is impossible if you truly believe it. I listened to him on the Friday, and on that Sunday, I was sitting on the couch thinking about my next challenge, and I thought about base camp years before that of Mount Everest, and I kept on thinking, but Lee, why go to base camp when you can simply go to the top? And there and then I made this decision. And I remember sending Lewis Q an email on that day on my couch on that Sunday. I said, Lewis, I've made a decision today. I want to attempt to summit Mount Everest. And he emailed me back, and there were 3 pieces of information. He said, number 1, Lee, you can achieve anything in your life if you believe it's possible. Number 2, I want to encourage you to meet my friend, Sibusiso Vilani. Sibu is the first African man to have summited from the north and the south. And then the most important part of that email, he said, Lee, you must go with the right expedition company. Everest is a dangerous mountain, and a lot of people have lost their lives on Everest. I was super excited about Lewis's response. The following morning, being Monday morning, I went to work a little bit earlier. And what do you do when you're looking for information today? You go onto Google. I went onto Google and I put in one question: how do I climb and summit Mount Everest? Ladies and gentlemen, all this information came to me. I was a novice climber. I'd only ever done one mountain in my life. It was 14 years before that, and that was Kilimanjaro. Kilimanjaro, for anybody that's climbed it, is 4 days up and it's 2 days down. Parts of the information that came to me on Google that day is that Everest takes 2 months to get to the top. To summit Everest, you need to take 2 months. For anybody running a company, heading up a team, or managing a department, it's a very long period of time to step out of that role. But the most important piece of information that came to me is that this personal expedition to climb Mount Everest was going to cost me 600,000 Rand, my personal capacity. I went on a big mission to find an expedition company that was going to be affordable, because there were many doing this. But the one company that I found was a Canadian company. There were no South African companies in the year 2012 taking on Mount Everest. It was a company based in Canada, and they were called Peak Freaks. There was one line on their website that motivated them. It said, we have a 100% safety record. And what that meant is that nobody had died on any of their expeditions. My family thought I was crazy, and they were really, really concerned. They said, Lee, you're an athlete, you run races, but you've never climbed mountains the height of Mount Everest, and so many people have lost their lives. I needed to reassure them that I was making a calculated risk by taking on something that I'd never done before, especially at that height. And I gave it a lot of thought, ladies and gentlemen, to think that if I did make it to the summit of Mount Everest, I'd be able to sit at a dinner table with my friends saying, you know what, guys, I made it to the top of the world. And when I've got to try and do a bit of good along the way. And it's very important that I say this right at the beginning of this talk. I'm not promoting myself as a do-gooder. I was going to take this mountain anyway. But I remember sitting with a friend of mine, Kate, we were having coffee. And I said, Kate, I'm planning to go to the highest point in the world. Who in South Africa would need raising money, raising awareness? And she said, Lee, there's an amazing group of children out at the Hartbeespoort Dam. And for anybody who doesn't know, from Johannesburg, if you drove out 45 minutes to 60 minutes in the direction of Brits, that's where the Hartbeespoort Dam is. And she said, there's an amazing group of children out there. It was November 2012, and I went to start to meet some of these children. And I will never forget the first child I met. He was 9 years old, and he was taking care of his 5-year-old sister. And I said to Sylvia, who was one of the preschool teachers in this community, and I said, but Sylvia, who's taking care of all these children? Be kind to them. It was an informal settlement of over 15,000 people, of which there were over 3,000 children, and a lot needing a lot of support. And it was there and then I decided I'm going to take on Everest, and I'm going to try and do it, doing some good along the way. And I had all these visions of training with the kids. I wanted them to sign the South African flag, and carte blanche caught wind of my story, and they were absolutely amazing. They followed my climb. I want to share a very short video with you that appeared on carte blanche in January before taking on the mountain.
Mount Everest remains the pinnacle of achievement for every climber in the world. Every year, hundreds of people try and reach the summit, which stands 8,848 meters above sea level. In the climbing season, the average temperature is minus 30 degrees. The contrast is just huge between these shacks baking in the sun near Hartbeespoort Dam and the icy slopes of Mount Everest. But there's a brave South African woman determined to bring them a lot closer and uplift some young lives in the process. This successful businesswoman and endurance athlete has completed 3 Ironman triathlons. But the only mountain she's climbed before is Kilimanjaro. Now, what gave you the idea of climbing Everest?
I was sitting on the couch in June last year and I was thinking to myself, what is the next big sporting thing I want to do in my life? And 2 years ago, I thought about Base Camp Everest, and then this thought came to me and I thought to myself, why do Base Camp if you can climb to the top of Everest? And it was like a speedometer going off in my mind from 0 to 180 in literally 2 seconds. And then I made the decision that I want to summit Everest, and I want to do it for a reason and a cause. And this is the reason we're standing on this mountain right here in 37 degrees.
But you tend to be very focused at work and at play.
Yes, I am. I put my mind towards something and I put my head down and I go for it. It was a huge eye-opener for me. I had no idea when I heard about child-headed households, and it was a huge, big reality check that there are hundreds and thousands of children in South Africa that are existing as the parents running a household as young as the age of 13 years old.
Lee is paying for her own Everest expedition and will donate all money raised to the Carte Blanche Making a Difference campaign, specifically the people of Schaumburg. They're amongst the poorest of the poor. What was your first thought when you met Lee?
Yeah, my first thought was like, ooh, this lady, she's brave, but she's got heart. Because she said to me, I know that you are powerful. You can work with me so that I can help the poor.
Lee's hoping to do the same by raising funds through her Everest climb and motivating other children to dream big. What do you think of Lee's venture to conquer Everest?
It's a mammoth task, actually. I mean, the extreme temperatures you're going to face over there.
I'm already praying for her.
And Lee's going to need all the prayer she can get. Even though she runs 10 Ks a day, she has very limited mountaineering experience, and Everest is brutal. Only 1 in 3 climbers reach the top, and for every 10 successful summits, 1 climber has died. 233 people have lost their lives on this mountain, and most of their bodies still lie buried in the snow. Lee has confidence in her expedition team, but her twin sister Kim is still nervous.
I was very, very unhappy when she first told me, just from a safety point of view, because there's so many terrible stories.
But Kim was at the airport in December to bid farewell to her sister when Lee flew to Europe for training with a specialist coach in the Swiss Alps.
This is tough.
Hey, keep going.
Lee spent a week on the slopes of Mont Blanc, and each day was a huge learning curve. Every experience and piece of equipment was new to her, walking with crampons on her boots, using the ice pick to help balance on a slope, attaching herself to the climbing rope with a carabiner, and handling the belay device that acts as a brake. On her return from Mont Blanc, Lee was back at Schaumburg to tell the children all about Mount Everest and her expedition planned for April this year. To make them feel part of it, she hired 2 mobile climbing walls that were set up in the school grounds so they could experience what it's like to climb up a rock face.
They have no inhibitions and they love it. They absolutely love it. And it's just a snippet of what my world is about that I'm bringing to their world.
It's impressive to see a young lady like her thinking about the poor and taking so much time to do such a work. And for the kids, it's motivating because she tried to involve them to know exactly what is going to happen when she climbs the Mount Everest.
But the children are now an integral part of her journey. Lee aims to take all the children of Schaumburg with her. Well, at least their signatures are destined to reach the top of Everest.
For every South African, for every child, the South African flag is something that represents the country, something that they are part of. No matter if you are an orphan, no matter who you are, but you are part of that flag.
The children then went on their own journey with the flag that is destined for Everest and set off for the mountains behind the school in a symbolic send-off for Lee. Even the very smallest children in the school were happy to head for the hills on one of the hottest days of the year. Over 500 kids reached the water point, but only the older ones carried on climbing. It took over an hour to reach the top, and even though they live nearby, none of these children have climbed up here before. Lee's hoping that her Everest expedition will spur them on to even greater heights.
I want to appeal to every single South African to climb this mountain with me. I want to raise the money, and I want them to raise money towards these children to build an orphanage, a centre and a clinic to better their lives, that one day they can believe that they can climb Everest, their own Everest.
Right, so that was really exciting. It was January, Sunday night, it was screened on Carte Blanche, and very interesting is that on the Monday morning, I had a number of schools in Johannesburg, affluent schools, saying, Lee, come and speak to us about the climb, come and speak to our children. We want to be part of this expedition. And I had to think of a very effective way to combine these children from affluent schools to the impoverished community out at the Hartbeespoort Dam. And for any who's been to Nepal, Nepal is the country right next to China where Everest is. At base camp, you see beautiful prayer flag structures. Special blessings. The climbers will come back safely. And I've been really, really fortunate that before Everest, as well as after Everest, I've spoken to more than 10,000 children about climbing essentially their own Everest. But I went to go and see these affluent schools, and I told them about the expedition. I told them what I was doing, what I was attempting to do. And I told them most importantly about the children at the Hartbeespoort Dam. And what I would do is I'd give them a piece of fabric and the colors of the South African flag, and I asked them to write a special message for the children at the Hartbeespoort Dam. And 1 week before we left for Everest, we erected our own beautiful prayer flag structure, and every single one of those prayer flags had a beautiful message for these special children. But now I'm going to take you onto the mountain. One of the most frequently asked questions that was always, why does it take 2 months to climb Mount Everest? And let me explain to you. That triangle right at the bottom of the slide is base camp. It took 11 days to get to base camp from Kathmandu. Base camp was my home for 2 months. Just lower, slightly lower than Kilimanjaro. What we is we would be based there, and we would climb through that Khumbu icefall to the second red triangle. Now you're at Camp 1. It's at 5.9 kilometers for a night. Then we climb to Camp 2 at 6.4 kilometers, to Camp 3 at 7.1 kilometers, and we'd sleep for one night, and we would go all the way back to base camp, sleep for 3 to 4 nights, and we would do that again and again and again. It was called a rotation. It is absolutely imperative for the human body to do that for 2 reasons. To acclimatize, to get used to the lack of oxygen, and to get used to the environment. Do you know that medical researchers have proven if they took your human body right now and they took you up to Camp 3, which is 7.1 kilometers, your body would be unconscious within 2 seconds because there's virtually no oxygen at that height. As you can see, the 4th triangle is up to 8,000 meters. We had never ever gone there until our summit window. The second most frequently asked question is that I got is, what was the big challenge? I always say as South Africans, we don't have ice and we don't have avalanches. It was cold. Very first 21 degrees. The cold management was my biggest challenge because I knew if I didn't get on top of the cold management, I would need to leave. The higher you go, the colder it gets. In order to manage the cold, I developed a personal mantra whereby every single morning I'd be in my seat and I'd say to myself, Lee, manage the cold, don't let the cold manage you. Lee, manage the cold, don't let the cold manage you. I knew I could never ever control the temperature around me at these low degrees, but I could control my mindset. Taking the mountain, Everest, and I Morocco, the Sahara Desert. It's known as the toughest foot race in the world. And one day it got as hot as 53 degrees. And I developed the same mantra. I was running through the desert thinking, Lee, manage the heat, don't let the heat manage you. Manage this heat, don't let the heat manage you. It's a bit like life. Manage the situation, manage you. Just another great visual. As you can see, there was home 2 months under all the ice. It was absolutely freezing cold. In addition to what I spent for the expedition, I spent another 40,000. There is no way in the world that you could be on Everest in ordinary clothes. The boots that I was wearing weighed up to 4 kilograms in weight. The one day we were training in the Khumbu icefall, and I was wearing exactly what I was wearing in the slide. And I went to our expedition leader at the end of the day, and I said to him, he was an incredible guy called Marty Schmidt. I said, Marty, I can't feel my 3 right fingers and I can't feel my 2 left toes. You need to know for any climber that's going to the expedition leader to tell them they can't feel fingers and toes. It's a very, very big alarm bell, because it's telling him that this climber or the climbers are not. Every single day off Everest, there were helicopter rescues for 2 reasons. People not managing the altitude, being the lack of oxygen, and the second, people not managing the cold. If you were not managing the cold on Everest and you were not feeling fingers and toes, you were getting extreme lead to fingers and toes. So he looked at me and he said, but Lee, what are you wearing? And I told him, and he said, you're not dressing for me. I can't get another layer in there. I've got 4 pairs of gloves on. I can hardly move my fingers because the fabric around them was so thick. And he taught me a fundamental lesson that day about cold management. He said, stop layering up your fingers and your toes. Layer up your organs. Once your organs are warm, protected, your extremities are essentially protected in management. The gentleman next to me is a Sherpa. For people in Nepal, the Sherpas are from this country, and they're incredible people. They know the altitude, they know the environment. But when I filled out my forms with Peak Fix Company, right at the bottom of the questionnaire, there was one question, personal Sherpa. Climbers to get to the top. I ticked the box immediately, and I kept on thinking to myself, I'm a novice climber. He's going to push me, he'll pull me, he'll lead me, he'll guide me, he'll train me. And then, ladies and gentlemen, I learned a very, very important lesson on that mountain. If it is to be, it's completely up to me. His name was Sangi 3. He could hardly speak a word of English. I don't know who Sangi 2 was. I've got no idea who Sangi 1 was, but he was Sangi 3. As you can see, you carry your own pack, you carry your oxygen, your own food. Essentially, like life, you climb that mountain all on your own. In the slide, I don't know if you, every single day I was wearing 110 factor sunblock, and this is what my skin looked like when I returned to South Africa. That is how badly burnt it was. On Everest, your skin is experiencing the double burn. You've got the reflection from the white ice, and then every single day you've got the sun beating down. I suppose get closer to the sun than when you're standing on top of Everest. I got back to South Africa on the Sunday. On the Tuesday, I was at a dermatologist morning side, and I sort of got panicking a little bit, and he made light, but he said I was just completely relaxed that I'd had what women paid 10,000 Rand for, and that was a natural chemical peel. I left the doctor's rooms with lots of moisturizers, and my skin from all the burn had eventually healed. That's base camp. 2013, there were 43 expedition companies from all over the world, 600 climbers going for the summit. We were really, really lucky. We had a phenomenal leader. You must remember, you are living on a glacier. It's an inhospitable environment. It's freezing cold. And essentially, you put together with a group of strangers, people that you've never met, especially in your team. They're from all different of the world. I was the only South African on the mountain, and you really that they're successful and that everybody's getting on, because this is people for a period of 2 months. I was a woman in a group of 8. As a leader, Marty's vision for our team was one team, one dream. We were all on, but he us, guiding us, and essentially keeping us as a team, being a group of strangers. The white in this slide is known as the Khumbu Icefall, and the Khumbu Icefall is the most dangerous part of the Everest climb. It's also known as popcorn. When I was on that mountain in 2013, there were 9 people that died, and one of them was in the Khumbu Icefall. What happens, because essentially it's tons of ice, and when the sun starts to beat on the dangerous. The danger, as you can see, is in this Khumbu Icefall, there are crevices that run 100 meters in terms of depth, and the only way you can get over a crevice is by crossing these ladders. That's a climber who was falling down off the ladder. One of the climbers that lost their lives when I was there did actually fall off the ladder and fell to his death, and his body still lies at the bottom of the crevice. The big challenges on Everest were the things that I couldn't train for. I suppose it's a bit like life. If you can train for everything that's going to be happening to you, you're pretty okay. But the things that you cannot train for were my biggest challenges. As I said earlier, South Africans, we don't have snow, we don't have ice, we definitely don't have avalanches. That every single morning in the early hours of the morning, we would have avalanches coming down. We were really fortunate in 2013 that the avalanches did not come to base camp. The year after I was on that mountain in 2014, not one person summited Everest. In one day, 16 people lost their lives in an avalanche. The following year, in 2015, there were no summits either. In one day, 17 people died, all in an avalanche. Just a reminder as to how dangerous the mountain is. This was a big day for me. As you can see, the beautiful summit of Everest in the background. Everest, as I said, is 9 kilometers in height, or it's also 29,000 feet. It's the height at which airplanes fly, and there's always a pumping jet stream wind pumping over the summit. As you can see, the Khumbu icefall is in the beginning part of the slide, and I will never forget seeing this photograph or this image. And I was in my tent. I was 11 days into the climb, and Peak Freaks, the Canadian company, were really amazing. At base camp, in our little tent area, we had connectivity. Every single day, I was on my phone, answering emails, speaking to my team, running my company from base camp Everest in Johannesburg. And I will never forget this picture, ladies and gentlemen, and I realized one very important lesson. I needed to unclutter my mind. Steve Hansen, the former All Blacks coach, an expression. He said, when my players are not performing, it's because their minds are cluttered. And I remember looking at my phone thinking, Lee, you're either going to continue running your company from base camp Everest, company in Johannesburg, or you've got to unclutter your mind to reach the summit of Everest by picking a lane. On that day, I was 11 days there, I switched off my phone and I never ever looked at it again, not for the rest of the 2 months. I realized that I needed to unclutter my mind and focus on my goal and pick a lane to what I needed to achieve in the 2 months. This is just a great visual of those ladders that cross the Khumbu icefall, and they're not specialized equipment, most definitely not. You could probably buy these at Builder's Warehouse, and they're tied together just with a very basic rope. There, as you can see, the ladder crossing one of the crevices. Now that may look pretty easy. You've got to remember the boots that you're wearing weigh up to 4 kilograms. The pack in your back is 15 kilograms. We crossed these ladders up to 65 times in the time period on Everest. The one rope. There's one rope on that mountain that gets every single climber up, and that same rope is there to get every single climber down. This is Camp 1, the things I couldn't train for. We reached out communication with my leader at base camp to Marty, who was our leader, who was always on the satellite phone to say, guys, we've checked the weather patterns and there's going to be a snowstorm. We could not leave those tents for up to 32 hours before heading to Camp 2. Now, Camp 2, as you can see at the base of that mountain, there's a better visual, is now at 6.4 kilometers. It was known as the last of the sophisticated camps. And I kept on thinking, why did they use the word sophisticated when everything on Everest was so inhospitable and so basic? It's the last time here that you have a dining tent. From here, you take your own food and you make your own food. As I mentioned, this height now is 6.4 kilometers. The summit, you've still got to go up about another 3 kilometers. The helicopter rescues every single day on that mountain were taking climbers off for 2 reasons: lack of oxygen, altitude management, and lack of cold management. If anything went wrong with you medically, you've got to hope it didn't happen higher than Camp 2, because the helicopters could not go higher because the air was too thin. There's a helicopter taking a dead body off the mountain. That's also a body being taken off the mountain. As I said, there was helicopter movement every single day off that mountain for the 2-month period. And then the second most dangerous part of the climb was going from Camp 2, from 6.4 kilometers, all the way to Camp 3, which is now at 7.1 kilometers. This is where your footwear, those heavy, heavy boots really came into play, because you've got to climb up a wall. It's a wall of blue ice. As you can see, the footwear there, and it looks like one massive ice block. At the bottom of our boots, we had something known as a crampon. And that crampon allowed us to get a firm grip onto the ice, So you had your pack on your back, you're all holding onto that one rope, and you firmly got to kick your boot into the ice, make sure you've got a grip before taking your next step and your next and your next. Here you can see the sheer drop as to how dangerous it was. If you came off that rope, it was sure to cause a fatality. Very, very steep, going from camp 2 to camp 3. One of the things, I had absolutely no idea how I was going to experience it until I essentially was experiencing it, and that was oxygen. At camp 4, every single climber got a bottle of oxygen. This bottle of oxygen went into your backpack, and this was to help you breathe. My biggest challenge over here was the feeling of claustrophobia. That entire contraption I had on my face was every 3 to 4 hours, mask off your face and actually hit it on your boot. And the reason being is because it was so freezing cold that that red pipe going to the oxygen bottle in your back was freezing up. And as soon as that was freezing up, you actually couldn't get oxygen into your system. The suit that I was wearing was made by a company in Cape Town called First Descent to protect your body from temperatures as low as minus 40 degrees. The coldest it got for us on that mountain was minus 35 degrees, and that was the night of the summit. As I said, the death zone, 8,000 meters, camp 4, this was it. People would say to me, but Lee, why is it called the death zone? It's exactly that. The human body is not meant to be at the height of 8 kilometers or 8,000 meters. If you have a cut or a wound, the human body will not heal, not at all. Your expedition leader wants to get you in there and out of there as fast as possible. Because of the lack of oxygen, the organs in your system are actually starting to shut down. The oxygen going to your brain to make the correct decisions is also being impacted because of the severe lack of oxygen. From those tents, ladies and gentlemen, to the summit, right, this is the last stretch, is 848 meters. When doing this talk to live audiences, I would ask the question to the audience, and I'm asking you today, if you had to, well, first of all, how many meters are there in a kilometer? There's 1,000, right? This is 848 meters. It's less than 1 kilometer to get to the top of the world. And I would ask an audience, if you had to walk 1 kilometer at a leisurely pace, how long would it take you? And people would say 10 minutes or 15 minutes. This took me 14.5 hours to do 848 meters. In my introduction, one of the things that I've been blessed to do is I've done 6 full Ironman, and I just want to give you an analogy here, comparison. The Ironman, for any of the people in the audience that actually have done it or know of it, it's an endurance event. It's in Port Elizabeth, and it's the 3 disciplines. You start swimming in the ocean, 3.8 kilometers. It's equivalent to 160 lengths at the Virgin Active. You get out of the ocean, you get onto your bicycle, you do 180 kilometers. It's 2 94.7s or 2 Cape Argus cycle tours. Then you put your bicycle down and you do a full 42-kilometer marathon. I've done the Ironman in less time than what it took me to do 848 meters. And people used to say to me, Becky, why were you so slow? And there were no jokes around it. The body is so exhausted, and because of the lack of oxygen, all you want to do is sleep and your body wants to shut down. Marty said to us, he said, no matter how cold you are, no matter how tired you are, do not stop moving. In 2012, there was a group of British climbers, and they did stop moving. And that entire group actually froze to death, and their bodies are still on Mount Everest. One of the big challenges we had in May were the high winds. Because of that jet stream wind, the winds are so extreme going for the summit. As you can see, a lot of broken gear, broken tents due to the extreme winds. Another element is that this was in the month of May. There are only 2 months of the year that you can climb Mount Everest, and that's the month of April and May. You've got a climbing window starting from the 1st of April and finishing on the 31st of May. You can't do it on any other month of the year. I summited Mount Everest on the 19th of May. It was a Sunday morning, and this is on Saturday night. We're in the tent. There I am in my red suit. And one of the climbers, an amazing guy called Murad from India, and we're busy having a conversation with Marty, our expedition leader, who was in the tent with us. And I will never forget this conversation. He looked at his watch and he said, Lee, Murad, it's 7 o'clock tonight. By 7 o'clock summit, we put on our headlamps and we put on brand new batteries, and we had started climbing at 7:30. By 8:30 that night, our headlamps were off. Not because the batteries were dead, but technical equipment and technical gear does not work and operate in temperatures as low as minus 34 degrees. As you can see, all the climbers, all those little lights from the headlamps, here we are on that one rope. Now, that may seem pretty easy. Everybody's going same pace on this one rope. Here's the challenge. That one rope has got to get every climber up and every single climber down. Now, Mount Everest, for a lot of these climbers, is the pinnacle of their success. They've done all the summits in the world, and this is the last hero mountain they're going to do. So the big challenge over here is you've got novice climbers and you've got very experienced climbers. Everybody is attached to that one rope by a 30-centimeter harness, which is your safety rope. Now, the challenge is when people have summited and they're going down, or when faster climbers need to overtake, somebody's got to let go of that rope, leaving you in a very vulnerable position. We've been climbing and climbing, and as I said, those 848 meters were taking me 14.5 hours, and I will never forget this moment when I started to see the sun rise. I kept on hearing Marty's words in the background saying, Lee, Murad, you guys are going to be at the top at 7 tomorrow morning. And I kept on thinking, if the sun is starting to rise, we've got to be close to the summit. We've got to be close to the top of the world. Absolutely magnificent visuals. This is one of my favorite. As you are climbing and climbing, you actually see the shadow of Mount Everest, just like a pyramid in Egypt. And I hope you can carefully see on this slide, on the ridge, this is the third most dangerous part of the Everest climb, and it's known as the Hillary Step. It's also known as the Everest traffic jam. I spoke a little bit earlier about that group of British climbers in 2012 that stopped moving and stopped climbing, and they froze to death, and this is where they froze to death. The reason they call this the Everest traffic jam is because when you're at this point, you've still got another 2.5 hours to go to get to the top. Remember, the people that have summited that are coming down are also here. That is a slide in 2013. Look at the traffic jam in 2019. 2019, for anybody who followed the climbing season, Everest was a mess. There were 11 people that lost their lives. 5 of them actually summited, but came down to the death zone and died in the death zone. There were 11 people just due to bad decisions, inexperienced climbers, and very bad management on this mountain. As you can see, you've got 3 ropes in this slide. There we are on the left-hand side. That was the rope of 2013. The one in the middle is the rope of 2012. And there on the side was the rope put in place there for the year 2011. People used to come to me after the talk saying, but Lee, who puts the rope in place? In the first week of April, you've got a group of Sherpas that go completely unsupported and unassisted, and they go with that rope of the climbing season to the top, and a lot of them have lost their lives doing it. And they put it and they fix it into the mountain. As soon as that's done, they send a communication down to base camp to the expedition leaders to say, right, the climbing rope for the season is in place, start sending your climbers up. Marty, our leader, used to say to us, don't touch the ropes from the previous seasons. They're frail, they're brittle, and they will cause fatalities. Now, 14.5 hours later, we got to the top. It was around 10 o'clock in the morning, and those beautiful prayer flags that you see at base camp are also at the top of Mount Everest. Really, really beautiful. I was also often asked, Lisa, you got to the summit. How long were you at the top of the world? Marty said to us, guys, we're going to be up there for about 20, 25 minutes. Take your photographs, do what you've got to do, and then we've got to head down. A truly magnificent sight. I had visualized this moment. I had dreamt of this moment. I carried the beautiful South African flag in my backpack, the one the children had signed, for 2 months. And I'd really visualized this moment about standing on top of the world and holding out the South African flag. I said the temperatures were as low as minus 35 degrees. The wind chill was minus 50. It was absolutely. And there's my Sherpa Sangi 3 who's trying to assist me with the flag and trying to assist me again. And then eventually I got it out there on my own. I'd like to close with my key message for today, and that is the greatest lesson for me is that Everest is like life, ladies and gentlemen. It's not how you start something, it's how you finish it. Do you know if you make it to the top of Everest and you've got a summit pic exactly like you're seeing over here and a smile and you've got your flag out there, if you get to the top but you don't get back to base camp, it's not counted as a summit. And the reason being is more people die and more people lose their lives heading down. 2019, as I said, there were 5 of those 11 climbers that died. They made it to the summit. They all had summit photos, but they died in the death zone. It did not count as a summit. You've got to get back to base camp successfully for it to be counted and to qualify to have a successful summit. Exactly like life. It's not how you start something, it's how you finish. There were two questions that I was asked when returning, two most important questions, and that was, Lee, did you ever think that you weren't going to make it? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm always training for something. I've done endurance events, I'm doing races. I've always got something that I've got a goal that I'm training towards. And I went onto Everest thinking I'm pretty fit, I'm pretty okay for this, and I completely underestimated it. When I was asked the question, Lee, did you ever think that you weren't going to make it? I didn't think after getting to the summit, I was going to get back to the death zone. As I said, it took me 14 and a half hours to do less than a kilometer. I got to the summit, I was hallucinating, I was out of control, and I was freezing cold. And I thought, it's taken so long to get here, I don't know how on earth I'm going to get back to the death zone. And this was the danger point. This is where so many people have lost their lives, because exactly that, they're exhausted, lack of oxygen, they're hallucinating. And the most important question is, Lee, when you thought you weren't going to make it, what was the thing that triggered you to make it? And I really believe in life, when your purpose is greater than your challenge, that there's absolutely nothing that you cannot achieve. I want to close with a short video and then one more slide. Part of the goal was reaching the summit of Everest. The second is that I'd had that opportunity to say, I wanted to appeal to every single South African to climb this mountain with me so we could raise the money to build a center and a clinic for these children. And we did exactly that. We raised the money through the publicity on carte blanche. And on the 5th of December, 2014, we opened the doors to the Field of Dreams Children's Clinic. And on the 1st of October this year, we're opening the doors to the Field of Dreams Clinic. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing me to share my story today. And thank you for that technical support at the beginning of my talk. I really appreciate it. And just thank you very much, Shelley, you and your team. Thank you for an awesome morning.
Thank you, Lee. Well, I have to say, I mean, it's quite emotional going through the stuff with you. I mean, you go from highs to lows to happy to... How do you stand on a mountain and carry on the next day knowing that maybe a team member that was with you is no longer there?
Shelley, that's a great question, because at the end of the day, you know, you're not there with your family, but at the end of 2 months, you've developed great friendships with people, and there's caring, but also fear, because you realize that you're in the death zone. People are being flown off the mountain. You're seeing dead bodies going. It was just a reminder always that a very dangerous environment, but also my reality is that I've chosen to be there. So every risk was a calculated risk. Train for the moment, be in the moment, be careful in the moment, lean on people with credentials. We had a phenomenal leader just to guide us, to train us, but just to really be aware of the environment, it was not for sissies, that I can tell you.
Absolutely, I can understand that 100%. And if there was any good advice to give someone in your life, what would it be that you would turn around and say to someone that's seen you through your time?
Oh, such a great question. Shirley, I would encourage that person to not waste any time. I really believe in life is that the problem is we think we've got time. And I want to challenge people in their own personal, take on the challenges, take the road less traveled, because my greatest gifts have been the toughest things that I've done. And I think, I'm not saying with any judgment. Many times people think I should have, I would have, and I could have, and then it's too late. Today's the 17th of August. There's never going to be another 17th of August 2021. Make a decision today to commit to whatever that thing is that you want to be, that you don't want to be, but don't waste time in it, and don't be afraid of the challenge, because the greatest challenge is the greatest gift.
Wow. And so I heard that you're a twin. Does your sister have the same sense of adventure as you?
No, she doesn't. Her name is Kim, as you saw in the video. There's 10 minutes between us. We're unbelievably close, but we're very, very different people. Very, very different. But she's supported me in all my wild, crazy adventures. And no, but to answer your question, no.
Okay. Thank you, Leah. It's been a phenomenal session. And I've just looked at all the comments and everyone's like, wow, inspiring, phenomenal, fantastic. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. And I'd like to close off in just saying I'd seen on Facebook in July, our Facebook stalked you. And you turned around and you put a comment on there that says, things will settle, people will recover, lives will be saved, and essentially South Africa will heal. Let's be close and let's stand together. And right now, just fuss bait. And I think that is so awesome, such a phenomenal thing to be saying, because we knew as a country we have to fuss bait. We're phenomenal people, we're resilient people. And I mean, you being one of the only South Africans on that mountain that day is just crazy. And thank you for putting your flag up there for us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. And thank you, Shirley, for this wonderful opportunity. And just a big thank you.
And Lee, if people want to get involved in the Field of Dreams Foundation, how do they go about doing it?
Yes, we've got a great website. The history there, the journey is there. All the exciting developments. We've got the Field of Dreams website is available for anybody and everybody to have a look.
Lovely. Thank you so much. I don't see any questions at the moment. Everyone's just said how impressed they are, and thank you for sharing your journey and your experience, and also caring the steps to help the less fortunate. One lady said, Lee, your bravery is inspiring, no lie, bigger to you and all that you have accomplished. So thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Thanks, Shirley.
Have a lovely day.
Yes, I'm going to. Stay warm.
You too, and hope the weather stays like this.
Exactly. Thanks,
I suppose we don't know warm, we don't know cold, nothing like you.
No, I never complain about the cold anymore. Never.
I'm sure. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.